My name is Victoria Schofield, and I was President of the Union, Trinity term 1977. Well, I was at Lady Margaret Hall, and the person that I really formed the greatest association with at Lady Margaret Hall was Benazir Bhutto. And it so happened that we were both also members of the Oxford Union. And so there was a double bond in a way, that we were at the same college and we were interested in being members of the Oxford Union. We sort of reveled in each other's success, and I think the thing that's most important about Benazir is that she reveled in my success. I was following on after her, and in fact, she became the third woman president in Hillary 1977, and I became the fourth following her. It was the first time, there'd only been two previous women anyway, but it was the first time another woman followed a woman. You might have thought she'd think, well, I want to sort of be the third woman and not have another woman follow me. But she was thrilled. And I think that marked our relationship throughout our life, that she was always very enthusiastic about what I did, as indeed I was enthusiastic about what she did. But of course, as we know, her life took a very different and tragic turn. I think the thing about the early 70s on university campuses is that it was remarkably different from how it had been in the late 60s. There was such a complete transformation. You almost thought, well, the late 60s was an aberration. The sort of blue jean era had gone. Women were dressing in pretty dresses. Actually, long dresses had come into fashion. Politically as well, that rage seemed to have evaporated. People were back studying. They were back paying attention to their exams. The sit-ins, the protests seemed to have really evaporated. The election process was much simpler 50 years ago than it is in the present day, because we stood as individuals. We didn't have a slate or a manifesto, because actually canvassing was strictly prohibited. And you were supposed to win the election on your debating skills in the debating chamber. I remember very vividly my motion, which happened in 7th week of Benazir's term, was that the individual has the power to shape the course of history. And I spoke in favor. I believe the motion was carried. But that wasn't really the point. The point was how witty you were, how fluent you were. It certainly wasn't done to sort of stand there and just read a long speech. You might have some notes, you might have some prompts, but it was very much the debating style that we've seen in our Houses of Parliament. I suppose the debate that really sticks in the mind in terms of topicality is the debate on joining the EEC, as was the European Union. Parliament had already joined Britain in the European Union, but the Labour Party, which won the 1974 election, had promised a referendum. And that referendum was due to take place on June the 5th, 1975. In the term of Victor van Amerongen, Trinity 1975, he held a debate 2 days before, on June the 3rd. The chamber was packed because as students we were interested in what was going on, and it was just very topical. And I think we had sort of stellar guests: Barbara Castle, Jeremy Thorpe, Edward Heath, Peter Shaw. And so it was certainly a debate that you wanted to be present at. The Oxford Union voted to remain within the EEC. This was the point about the referendum. It was consulting the people. And then 2 days later, the general referendum voted to remain within the EEC. And so I think, as often happens, the Oxford Union was leading public opinion. what is so important in life, whichever profession one joins, I'm not just talking about politics, I'm talking about the law, I'm talking about as journalists, as just human beings, the ability to listen to another point of view that you might not feel you lean to, that you like, that you understand, but in the listening, you may understand better. You may not agree, but you can see, that's another viewpoint. I hadn't thought about that. That's what I learned at the Oxford Union. And I think that's the gift of freedom of speech, freedom of expression. It's so important just for our general well-being, our general mental attitude, not to have opinions curtailed and to be able to understand the various other sides, because it's not just one opinion or another opinion, there are multiple opinions, because we live in a multicultural, multi-everything world. Certainly the societal complexion of members of the Oxford Union has changed since I was up 50 years ago. For example, Benazir Bhutto, and I remember there was another Pakistani girl, they were among the very few South Asians. But now the South Asian and indeed Middle Eastern population is far greater. It can only be positive. There's nothing negative about making friends with different cultures. I would also like that diversity to continue, but to become more cohesive. I think the Oxford Union is a prime example where you can be a great big melting pot of views, ideas, rich, not so rich, poor, poorer, less advantaged, however one wants to describe it. And then, as I say, I can't emphasize enough how important it is, the friends you make, particularly at this age, late teens, early 20s. You make friends that you really can keep with you for life.